Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to today's podcast. We have a very special episode today that was binned about a year back, I think, once we had recorded this and then it got lost as usual in the clutter. As it happens with almost all, or not all, but like a lot of our episodes, which is kind of unfortunate. Anyways, today it's only me, but I'm interviewing slash talking with the chief storyteller and producer of Story Inc., which is India's biggest book to screen adaptation company. He's also a founder of House of Talkies, which is a film and series production company whose first project was Trial by Fire. I hope you guys have seen it. It's a great series. We've talked about it also extensively. And he's also a host of another fellow competitor podcast, I guess, Pinjistan, which is also talks about movies, TV shows, etc. Please welcome Sidharth Jain. How are you, Mr. Jain? I think that's what I'm going to go by. Yeah,
Hi, Dhruv. Very happy to be on your show. Just
yeah.
so you know that Benjistan we stopped recording a year ago, so we're not competing with you. You won the competition. You're still running. We're not.
I mean, but you can get resume anytime, right? So it's like not a.
Yeah,
Are you
no,
going to
we're
resume
not.
or no? Oh, you're not resuming. Okay,
I
fine.
don't. I think at some point we will. It's just
Yeah,
that all my other two co-hosts on that show, my friends,
yeah.
they've all got so busy,
Okay, got
and
it.
it's just been a little. And also, we have to be very careful now in the industry. I can't
Okay.
keep criticizing other shows.
Ah,
Then when
okay,
my
okay,
turn
okay.
come,
Got
I'll
it. So
be in big
it's a
trouble.
conflict of interest. This is
Ah,
this
ah.
after you got you released Trial by Fire and everything, like when it became
No,
more
so
out of
I,
the way.
so I was, preparing for trial for 6 months before.
Okay.
So 6 months we stopped the podcast.
Okay, got it. So you can't
Now
like
it's good to
basically go about saying bad things about podcast like other
bad.
shows.
Yeah, I mean, we can't criticize. We can't critique.
What is the what I from whenever I had listened to it, I mean, you guys critiqued some
No, we were
um
usually talking about what we loved. So we
yeah,
kept that tone.
exactly. Yeah, same. I
Yeah,
mean, we try and do that, but then we also talk
yeah.
about
So we'll
Brahmastra
probably come back.
also,
We'll come
but
back.
whatever.
We just need more enthusiasm and we'll come back. A
Got
little
it.
more
Yeah,
push.
yeah, no, makes sense, makes sense.
But
But
anyway, let's get to your show. What are we talking about?
yes. So today, so basically, we are. I think one of the key reasons of interest I think I've always had is because you had started Story Inc. and I knew about it, and it
Hmm.
was one of those things which, I as an outsider, as someone who doesn't read much, which is going to be a recurring
Hmm.
thing I'm going to mention again and again in this episode. It was interesting to me that how Story Inc. as the sort of adaptation hub almost of India now how it came about as an idea to you because when I heard about it, it seemed very very natural for the time we are living in, but also it didn't strike me. So it was kind of a very interesting. So I'm interested in how you sort of thought to conceive it at that particular moment in time, which is how many
So,
years now? Actually,
yeah,
you
so I
can.
started exactly in April 2018. So this
Okay,
month we finished 5 years.
got it.
And,
Yep.
I left Hotstar in 2017 and I was
Hmm.
wondering what to do.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to just be a usual, just another production house.
Hmm.
I thought, there's no problem that I'm solving by being a producer. There are
Hmm.
like enough producers in the system, in the
Yeah.
industry. But by 2017, all the major international players were streaming in India.
Hmm.
And I knew that the demand for projects will go up.
Hmm.
And there were agencies in India which were solving the talent problem. There were
Okay.
talent management companies.
Hmm.
But nobody I thought was solving the story problem for the industry as a whole.
Got it. Okay.
And I by then had, I had about 14, 15 years of experience
Yeah.
you know, in development.
Yeah.
And I've been working with writers, and that's been my primary behind the scenes kind
Yes.
of experience. So
Yeah.
I thought I proclaimed that I was the right person
Yeah.
to solve the story problem.
Hmm.
And also the trigger was, I came to New York for those 2, 3 months
Yes,
to
I
spend
remember.
some
Yes.
time understanding the theory of story,
Hmm.
under this teacher, Bill Hopkins.
Hmm.
And that really opened my mind and gave me more confidence that, I think I should find a way
Yeah.
to solve the story problem for the industry as a whole. I
Hmm.
didn't have a business plan. I didn't, I figured that, if I solve a problem and I'll become useful, we'll
Hmm.
find a business model to it.
Yeah.
So with that, I just decided to start with a Facebook post
Hmm.
that, I'm starting a story company.
Yeah.
And by the end of the day, a bunch of producer friends messaged me saying,
Hmm.
do you have a story? Do you have a story? What story do you have?
Yeah.
And then quickly within the next 4 5 days, I started looking for books,
Hmm.
started reaching out to publishers and authors,
Hmm.
and I shortlisted a few books.
Yeah.
And the producers, they bought the rights immediately. So
Okay.
between then and now, it's been 5 years. I've sold more than 225 books for
Wow.
screen
Yeah.
to about 50 plus production houses.
Yeah.
And I'm solving a problem for the industry, so I think it's useful.
Yeah.
And then when COVID happened,
Hmm.
I figured that the growth of streaming is going to get accelerated.
Hmm.
So what would have happened after 5 years happened in 2020. People were at home streaming.
So when
So then,
everyone was suffering, you were
no, then
benefiting.
I just thought then that's the time to no. So I thought because writers are sitting at home
Yes.
and looking at, they can continue to work.
Yeah.
I thought I should get into the development and
No,
production
no, totally
business.
makes. I'm being flippant about it, but of course it
Yeah,
makes
yeah,
makes
absolutely.
sense.
I get the joke. And
Yeah.
so what I did
Yeah.
was I started also thinking, well, the stories that I like, let's
Yeah.
start developing them. So we
Yeah.
also started getting on board writers
Yeah.
to start adapting books for screen, writing the scripts and the
Hmm.
Bibles.
Yeah.
So by the time we came to 2022,
Hmm.
we had a nice slate of stories coming from books,
Hmm.
being written into scripts for screen,
Yeah.
and then being pitched to OTT platforms.
Got it.
So it kind of, the whole story universe started coming together on its own.
Yeah.
But the
So I
trigger was basically solving the problem for
got
the
it. No,
industry.
no, that makes sense. But so like, but as you had mentioned, like the initial books that you had sort of, allow or like given to the producers to sort of,
Hmm.
uh, so were those books that you had been already had read like a long time back and were already thinking about adapting them or like how they would appear on screen, which I'll get into this more, but like since you had mentioned this,
Hmm.
I wanted to know about the initial sort of, what books did you first sort of
So I started
give
actually
away?
with the latest books. So
Okay,
I
got
thought,
it.
because see, basically it's also a sales job,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to find stories which are relevant
Yes.
and
Yeah.
very commercial.
Mm-hmm.
So I started with the newer releases that were like releasing in 2018 or
Mm-hmm.
which got published in 2017.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to start with the new latest stories
Mm-hmm.
by newer and more contemporary authors. And
Got it.
then once we started like exhausting the current lot,
Yeah.
then we started going back in the backlist.
Got it. Got it. And that was your sort of. So again, we'll get to this genre thing, but I was about to ask one of the questions
Mm.
I'd written down was, so you sort of switched from being more of a watcher to becoming a reader, right? Like kind of like that sort of, or is it still like a balancing act sometimes that you have to do?
So, I mean, I read for work now. Earlier, I
Mm-hmm.
used to read for as a hobby, but
Mm-hmm.
I'll be honest. I've always been a non-fiction reader.
Mm-hmm.
I or ha, I've always read fiction for work.
Got it. Okay.
So I largely like to read non-fiction, hear
Mm-hmm.
non-fiction,
Mm-hmm.
and but yeah, I mean, I read the books that we really need to adapt ourselves.
Yeah.
What we need to sell, I don't really read all the books. It's not possible. But I have
Yeah.
a team.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have a pretty large team that kind of filters books and stories and submissions.
Is there a checklist, like stuff that needs to be met in order to be selected or to be sold to the
So
publishing houses?
if I put a checklist, no,
Mm.
then it'll not work. I'll
Yeah.
become like a publisher,
Mm-hmm.
catalog. So what
Mm.
I've tried to always retain that
Mm-hmm.
we are a very boutique specialized service,
Got it.
and we have to service as per the need of the producer. So
Mm.
like a producer will come to us
Mm-hmm.
saying this is the content strategy,
Mm-hmm.
this is what they need, and then we find stories for that. Now, when you ask me checklist that how do I pick the book?
Yes.
On the
Yes. Yes.
side, what we do, the checklist largely is it high concept? Does
Mm-hmm.
it break the clutter?
Mm-hmm.
Does it have enough plot or
Mm.
interesting characters? So the usual checklist that we have for a film script.
Yes. Yes.
So
Yeah.
we always look at it from a like, will it be a good film script or a premium OTT show?
Yeah.
So it's not very, very, like rigid. It's still very
Yeah.
instinctive.
Yeah.
It's still very, very driven by the personality of the producer or the
Mm-hmm.
filmmaker.
Yeah. No, that
And
makes
I keep
total
it very
sense. Yeah.
fluid.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
if
it makes. I was basically, I by checklist, I basically meant a sort of fluid thing only. But I think it was more just a sense that you have kind of an idea though of like what is adaptable, what is not adaptable, what I mean, so is there sort of certain examples
So
of
I'll
books
answer
that?
the story so I'll answer the same
Hmm.
question in a different way also.
Hmm.
Like how there is every filmmaker has his own style of making a film,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And if you give the same script to three different filmmakers, they'll probably make three different films,
Hmm.
which would be
Yeah.
very different.
Yeah.
Similarly, I feel when it comes to stories,
Hmm.
sometimes the checklist might be right for one kind of filmmaker, but wrong
Got it.
for a different filmmaker. So
Hmm.
what we have done, we've tried to keep it more instinctive
Hmm.
than formula driven.
Got it.
And I have very interesting young team
Hmm.
that watches a lot,
Yeah.
right? Reads a lot, reads not as much, but watches a lot because see, we are actually in the screen business.
Yeah.
I'm not in the book publishing business.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we watch a lot and we try and use that instinct of that person
Hmm.
across the team, different people. So different people in a team have a different checklist in their head
That's what I
and
was
they
up to
pick
buy.
different
Yeah.
titles.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
so
So you get a
so
varied
that's actually
process
more
already,
fun.
basically,
Yes.
because
Yeah,
of just the individual taste being very different
exactly.
in that sense. Got it.
Yeah,
Got it.
yeah.
And that's also, I guess, down to streaming, right? Because streaming, you get to see so many different types of contents
Yeah.
and sort of, different types of films and shows and everything. And I think one of the genres I think you have identified, or whenever we had talked, I still remember this somehow, that you really liked true crime, right? Or like crime dramas, documentaries almost on
I like
TV.
real stories and docus more, but that's
Yes,
my
yes,
personal taste.
yes, yeah, yeah, yeah. So, but I mean, so suppose that would be something that you would also be drawn to in the sense of when you're picking something, right? Like that would be something you would publicize or sort of,
So,
give to
so
the, yeah.
I don't use my personal taste as much actually
Okay.
in terms of shortlisting what other producers will
Mm-hmm.
need. I usually work from what's a good content strategy for a platform,
Mm-hmm.
right? What should Netflix India do? What should Amazon India produce?
Yeah.
What should say Disney look at in India?
Mm-hmm.
Or what should a certain filmmaker look at? So we
Mm-hmm.
have a list of our primary clients, which are
Got it.
the top streaming platforms, the top filmmakers,
Mm-hmm.
the top producers, and the
Mm-hmm.
top actors. And then
Okay.
we try and see, does this story fit any one of them? So if I feel a
Understood.
story is super for Zoya Akhtar, then
Mm-hmm.
I will shortlist that book, not
Mm-hmm.
for myself or for anybody else, but just for Zoya. And
Got
then
it.
we will share it with her when she says that
So
she's
it's
looking for
very
something.
much like looking at mostly from how the screen thing comes first, than
Yes.
the sort of, got it.
Yes. Yeah.
Understood. Understood. And I mean, are there any sort of books that you've read which you thought that this is great, but this is not something that maybe we can do now, or it's not just budgetary concerns, but like just
Yeah.
screen. I know it's a very different thing, right? The book to screen is a totally different medium, and you have to make a gazillion changes and everything. So are there sort of specific examples of books that you really like, but like you also understand that it's sort of impossible almost to adapt it at this moment
So
in
there
time?
are actually a lot of, slice of life
Hmm.
books, especially like, love stories,
Mm-hmm.
rom-com, and something which is like a serious drama,
Hmm.
a family drama, or like you know, something that's very serious.
Hmm.
It works as a reader, but
Hmm.
for
Got
screen,
it.
it
Hmm.
won't be an entertaining project or a
Hmm.
compelling story,
Mm-hmm.
or it's too common as a theme. But
Understood.
it's people will say, oh, it's an art house film, right? So stories like those, we have
Yes.
to kind of, while we like them, we have
Yeah.
to keep them aside because we think, it'll be difficult to finance those projects. So I
Understood.
think right up to financing and marketing strategy when
Hmm.
I look at book synopsis for screen.
Mm-hmm.
We
Got it.
think that much far forward in the process,
Yeah.
and then we figure, should we represent this book or not?
Yeah. No, no, that totally fits. I mean, I mean, we'll get to the whole art house debate because I think I'm on the art house side, I guess,
Yeah.
here because I watch
So the
a lot
books
of
that you will pick, we'll say, okay, these are great for bookshelf.
these won't be translatable to screen, basically. No, but I think for me it was very interesting because we mentioned this, that the book reading for me has always been, unfortunately, actually, and I think quite disappointingly, I feel I miss out a lot when I don't read. But like to me, when streaming was first introduced in India, and we've discussed this before on the podcast, it was very much like a liberating thing. Like it was very much,
Yeah.
I always cite this as an example, when Lust Stories came out, the
Mm.
anthology series on
Yeah.
Netflix, and I saw Zoya Akhtar's segment, and I was like, who will produce this segment anywhere other than, streaming? That was my sort of
Correct.
like perception of it, but it's changed wildly. I think like a lot of times,
Yeah.
um now there's a mix of mainstream and I think independent art housey stuff. I think is very much on the side burner, which it always is. But yeah, like I'm trying to think of adaptations now which are art housey, but I can't, so I will move on. I'm sure that there are, but like I can't think of any. But
No, like for example, I'll give you an example. Suppose that film that was made on Manto. Now, on the
hmm,
life of Manto.
the
So I mean, there are
Nandita Das film.
yeah. So there are
Yes.
books written on his life. So
Yes.
let's assume that that book is say based on in Manto's life,
Mm-hmm.
not Manto's work, but as a combination of both about
Mm-hmm.
Manto the writer. Now
Yes.
that is ideally for a streaming audience because the audience may not go to the theater with it.
Mm-hmm.
So in a theatrical world, that film might not work.
I think it released
But a film like
theatrically, but it didn't do well, of course. But
but a
uh,
film like that purely for streaming will eventually find its audience slowly and slowly across the
got
world.
it. Got it. Understood. Okay. But
Though it
so
wasn't
you
that
take that
but like
into
Masan
account also?
also.
Like
Sorry?
when you take that into account, like the whole
Yeah,
longevity of, that some
yeah,
projects, will just
absolutely.
not have a immediate
We can at
catch
least
fire.
make intelligent, guesses.
Got it.
Ultimately, unless we see the product, nobody knows
Hmm.
the fate of it.
Yeah.
So ultimately, the audience will decide. But what
Hmm.
we can do is we can try and hedge our
Hmm.
risk by, and I personally don't believe in past patterns when it comes
Hmm.
to content. I
Yeah.
think we can't look at data. Or if the
Hmm.
audience liked a certain kind of story, we should give more of that.
That's the whole
In fact,
copycat thing
in
you
fact, I
almost,
like to do, so I stay away from that. I like to do the opposite actually.
Yeah,
So if
I
we
can
do too much
understand.
of this,
Yes.
yeah. So I
Yeah.
like to, break the trend. I don't
Yeah.
think in the usual way. And I
Yeah.
think that has helped us shortlist very interesting titles for the
Mhm.
industry, which
Yeah.
usually they were all missing out on or skipping.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just, I'll nicely plug in a nice, not plug in, but I'll nicely drop a nice word for Trial by Fire in many ways. Like, I think that was very much bucking a trend, in my opinion, at least for a lot of, the way in which crime dramas or sort of judicial even dramas were approached, I think, or
Mm.
were being approached in on streaming or Indian television. I feel that was one of the more unique approaches to covering a trial, or a justice delayed sort of narrative than I've seen in, for example, Burari Deaths is the one I keep
Mm.
coming back to. So I think that was like very different sort of ways in which you can approach this material, and I liked how it was done in Trial by Fire. But other things that I've listed a lot of questions I've realized, but I will go through them very quickly, I guess. But
Take your time.
when you're reading a book now, it was interesting to me.
Mm.
Can you actually enjoy it, like without having to visualize how it's going to be planned and everything? Like, what is the enjoyment factor? Like that always happens. I feel like even when I'm watching films, sometimes now I'm like, this is like
Yeah.
work. Still, like even if I'm watching for fun, I just
Mm.
have a knack of noticing certain things
Yeah.
much more
Yeah.
now. I
Yeah.
just feel, yeah. How
But I
does
think
that
that
work?
also makes it more fun for us, no? Because we are
Got it.
in that zone.
Mm-hmm.
We can beyond just like things as a reader.
Yeah.
And I personally quite like it because I love doing this. I've never really worked or had a career where I'm working to build a career or
Mm-hmm.
make money.
Yeah.
I've always done things that I love.
Mm-hmm.
So whether it's reading or watching,
Mm-hmm.
I've chosen this path because I love that bit. And
Mm-hmm.
ultimately my work is what is reading stories, discussing stories, and telling stories.
Yeah.
And as we are telling the stories, we are very focused on screen. Me,
Mm-hmm.
especially.
Mm-hmm.
So I really enjoy the thing of reading and imagining what we can do with it and
Mm-hmm. Got it.
how we can change things.
Yeah.
So for me personally, actually, it's great fun.
Mm-hmm.
And if I wasn't in the business, like I said, I wouldn't enjoy fiction as much, and I would prefer to read non-fiction. But I
Understood.
really only like fiction because I can do
Because of
something with it.
got it.
So I
Understood.
only
Yeah,
read
yeah.
books where the
I
rights are
always,
available for
yeah.
me.
I always
Otherwise,
think
I
that
can't.
people who are into the business or sort of into, I mean, I don't know about this is my idealistic point of view, I suppose.
Mm.
But to me, it's very much that there are so many other things to like in a film or a book if you're like into other processes involved inside it,
Mm.
apart from, plot, character,
Yeah.
like basic whatever, कि अच्छी लगी या नहीं types. So like, say if you're into so much of the process, I would assume that you'd have much more enjoyment, even when sometimes you read something that maybe isn't as great as a text, but you think that, oh, maybe it might work better on the
Yeah.
screen, right?
So it's also interesting that you said it. Like my biggest principle of
Hmm.
book to screen, I never judge material from what it is.
Hmm.
For me, it's always what can we do with it, what it can become.
Yeah.
So also when I'm reading a book, I'm like constantly thinking what we can do with it,
Hmm.
what it can become, how can it transform and evolve into something, better.
Is there a particular, actually, this is a very interesting point. Do you think sometimes books which actually don't work as much on the page might translate just better on screen? Like, are they like certain
I'll give an
time?
example, Trial by
Yeah.
Fire.
Okay.
The book was largely written by the parents
Yeah.
about their personal experience through the journey for justice. It
Mm-hmm.
was not written for screen.
Hmm.
And if you look at the show, it's very different in terms of screenplay than the book. I
Understood.
mean, the facts are taken from the book,
Hmm.
but the way the story is told is not from the
I
book,
was
right?
actually wondering that was one of my. I was like, we had decided not to talk extensively about Trial by Fire, but
Yeah.
one of the few questions I had listed down was, in the book, is it that expansive as the film is, or is it much more sort of a personal story?
It's
Uh,
personal, it's compact, it's more factual,
got it.
you know,
Okay.
and a bit emotional.
Yeah.
And for the screen, we had to find a different way to make it, work. Because in a book, if you're reading what's happening, if you're listing facts,
Hmm.
it's okay.
Yeah.
But on screen, every second something has to happen.
It
We
becomes
need action.
exposition, right?
Yeah,
If it's
because see,
not, yeah.
also on screen, a screenplay is all about action, dialogue,
Yeah.
right? In a book, we can take time off from action dialogue and talk about something.
Yeah.
So, so that's a great example where the book and both the material are very different.
Fascinating. Yeah.
And rightfully so, my goal always was, what can we do with it? It was never
Hmm.
to take the book and make it just like the book. Take
Hmm.
the raw material from the book and then make something else which will
Yeah.
work for the audience, because the viewing audience, their expectations are different than
Yeah.
a reading audience,
Yeah.
than a reader.
But yeah,
So,
exactly, like I mean, I'm not the biggest fan of, there's been a lot of, so we are in the age of adaptations, I feel, like in general. Like a lot of, I barely see original scripts in many ways in a
at
lot
least
of
in the
films,
West,
at
yeah, in
least
the
in the
West,
West. Yeah, a lot of it is just adaptations. I mean, I wasn't a fan
yeah.
of Dune last year, I think it released. And
Mm,
it felt like it was so faithful to the material itself, like
mm,
overly faithful almost, that
yeah,
it felt like you were sort of, and it doesn't translate in my opinion. Like I think like it just feels like the exposition element, as you were saying, like Trial by Fire,
mm,
if you translated it just into facts, that would just become, on
yeah,
screen it would just feel very awkward. And I
exactly.
think that's one of the few things that's very interesting about adaptation, I feel. It's a underrated and undervalued almost profession, I feel. Have you met writers, the book writers themselves, who want to screenwrite?
So, lot of book authors want to aspire to screenwrite,
Mm,
but screenwriting is a very different craft and needs a
mm,
very different kind of, commitment.
mm-hmm,
Uh, Needs commitment, needs craft,
mm,
needs understanding, and you should have a natural aptitude.
mm-hmm.
And it's also very, technical, writing
Mm.
a screenplay.
You have to
So
write
a
about
few,
film technique also, right? Like a lot of times how
yeah,
the scene is set up,
right.
or right? Yeah, right. Oh, that's
Yeah,
good.
so very few authors actually
Mm,
manage to cross over. I mean, if I have to see within my circle,
mm.
how many authors we use for screenplays, maybe two, three, that's it,
Wow.
out
Okay.
of 200.
Mm,
It's a very, very small
mm.
number. But yeah, I mean, every author fantasizes about it.
Yeah.
That if I want to write a script based on my book or something,
Yeah.
but it's not easy to, because also in the process of like adapting, we
Mm,
end up changing a lot, and sometimes like authors are very guarded about their
mm.
books, their stories.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always best to have a third person come on board with a
Mm.
fresh view and lens,
Yeah.
and then be more organic to what will work for a good screenplay.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, no, that makes sense. I mean, but was there a problem in the case of something like Trial by Fire, even like if you're adapting because you are added, you said, right? You changed a lot of stuff. I mean, if you can reveal this, of course, you
Yeah,
can.
yeah, no, no,
Yeah.
no,
Eh,
no, no. There's no problem. I mean, we always tell the author that we will make changes
hmm.
to the book. They're always okay with it.
Got
So
it.
there's no surprise for them. And we always tell them that we will not be using them.
Hmm.
We will use our discretion
Hmm.
and find the right team of screenwriters. See,
Hmm.
every specialist has to do their job.
Hmm.
The job of the author is done once the book is done.
Yeah.
Then the job of the screenwriter to work with the producer, director, and
Hmm.
create a script that works.
Hmm.
And you'll always want to take somebody who's very good at, screenwriting.
Hmm.
So it's usually, I mean, I have never really used the author in the screenwriting process as yet.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. I mean, I guess the main contestation a lot of times, whenever I've sort of read some complaints, is that this doesn't capture the essence of whatever we had written and sort of, but I think those are things that you need to.
See, people always nitpick and there'll always be a view. Like there's
Hmm.
always a filmmaker's medium.
Hmm.
See, a film is always teamwork.
Yeah.
Different heads of departments will come together to
Yeah.
convey the story. A book is an author's medium. A
Yeah.
film is, there's the actor, there'll
Hmm.
be the screenwriter, there'll be the DOP, there'll be the editor,
Yeah.
director.
Yeah.
Everybody has a point of view and becomes a collective vision.
Hmm.
So a screen project is always a, collective vision,
Yeah.
which 200 people come together to make a film.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
crew is large. For a book, it's probably just the author and the editor, and that's it.
Yeah.
So
No,
it'll
that's
always be
totally true.
different. It's a different format. It's a different
Hmm.
medium,
Hmm.
and the output will not always be the same in every medium.
Yeah.
There can be some examples where it works, but
Hmm.
largely, I think we should be sincere to the process of the medium.
Yeah. Absolutely. So my big thing with adaptations is also, sometimes words, because books are essentially words, and then you have to do your imaginative process upon them.
Mhm.
Up a lot of times, screen adaptations also rely a lot on words, and I often feel, at least this is not the case with everything, but like I think some of the weaker adaptations often tend to emphasize words almost too much and forget the visual side of the story, or like visualizing the sort of elements of it. So is there a particular way in which you try to circumvent that? Like, do you like, so when you're thinking about it, you're visualizing, right, rather than writing, I guess, is the sort of question, I guess. Yeah.
And also in India, it's more difficult because largely contemporary books are written in English
Okay.
and you're making Hindi films.
Mm.
So,
So you have to
then words is
translate
also
also.
language, right? Something that works superbly in English may not work
Yeah.
when you start talking in
Absolutely. You
Hindi,
can't even
right?
do it verbatim, like just translate it like
Ah,
a
I can't
sketch
even
to
take
paper.
the funny dialogues from certain books
Yeah.
of characters, and because I may need to put them in Hindi.
It's this.
So I
Have
think,
you? Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt, but
hmm,
like subtitles may sometimes they try and circumvent. It's one of my favorite things is watching songs ka subtitles in Hindi,
yeah,
where they change references, like Lata Mangeshkar
yeah,
becomes Celine Dion, and
yeah,
you get
because they
different
are
sort of,
actually
yes.
addressing it to a non-Indian audience on
Yeah,
screen.
exactly, exactly,
So they want to
exactly.
give
Yeah,
them references, cultural references of that,
yeah,
which are more
yeah.
international.
Yes, yes,
So
yes, yes,
it's
yes.
slightly different,
Yeah,
and it's for streaming platforms.
yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, so I think, no, I think, because the medium is so different, no, and
yeah.
the words in book will not translate exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So hence, we don't use the authors for writing
Mm-hmm.
screenplay because that is what they will do.
Mm.
They'll start translating it the way it's in the book.
Yeah,
And sometimes it
verbatim,
just
right?
cannot
Yeah,
be, yeah,
basically.
and
Yeah,
it cannot be that way.
yeah.
Sometimes you don't need to know the backstory of the character. Like in a book, wherever convenient, they'll just go back into the backstory of the character.
Flashback
What
is, I
happened in
think, the
his
bane
childhood,
of our, yes.
and in a movie, we may not need to go back into detailed flashback. This could be a reference in dialogue. अरे जब ये छोटा था इसने पहली बार
Yeah,
चोरी की.
I mean, the
That's it.
actor does so much heavy
Yeah,
lifting also, I feel, right? Like
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I was so this is my extent of adaptation to screen knowledge, because we had a class where we were studying The
Hmm.
Power of the Dog, which was
Uh-huh.
adapted from a novel to one of the better films of that year, which sort of was nominated for Oscars and all. And just the amount of cutting uh, that film did in terms of
Mm.
entire chapters being absolutely taken out, and being, there's so much being relied there on, actors, and just,
Yeah.
how much they can convey uh, passages and passages worth of what has been written in the book. It was very, like, I guess, illuminating for me at least. And I guess casting becomes a huge thing also then in that sense, I suppose,
Mm.
and
Of
how
course.
to, yeah, communicate a lot of these ideas. Um, are there any adaptations recently that you've seen which you thought were very good in India or outside, that you sort
Mm,
of were like, or you could tell, or you were almost, you didn't know that they were adaptations even when you were watching them, sort of like that? Whatever comes to your mind.
Nothing that really strikes me right now. Maybe
Yeah.
through the conversation, if I can think of something.
I mean, my favorite example is always Coen Brothers, No Country for
Hmm.
Old Men. I think that's a phenomenal adaptation.
Like I'll
Uh,
tell you one
hmm,
great adaptation, which is a cliched answer,
hmm.
but it's always I think one of my best examples that I give to my writers is Three Idiots.
Ah, yes. But
You
Chetan
know
Bhagat stuff,
the
I feel, is always a bit screenplay uh,
no,
ke
but I
liye.
thought they changed a lot, no,
Okay,
in the film also, and they
okay.
adapted it very differently.
Hmm.
And that was
Got
a
it.
good example of how the screenplay writer and the director took the premise to the next level.
Hmm. Understood.
And
Yeah.
I think it's because it wasn't really like the book.
Hmm. What about Hello then by Chetan Bhagat? And that was
No, to
adapted
the
to.
filmmaker and the writer, no. So that's why the screenplay writer and the director are very important.
Okay, right.
And that's why, Raju Irani is Raju Irani.
Yes. Well, I was thinking of other adaptations also of Chetan Bhagat now, which was
Two States was
Two
nice.
States
It's a
was
good.
nice. Yeah. I mean, it was also seemed like, I would assume, the book was very Bollywoodish also, right, in general. So, I mean, how
Yeah, but
much would.
see, it's also, but more than that, it's really, I
Hmm.
think, the writer director
Hmm.
to pick what they need to make a project work.
Yeah. No, no, true. I mean, you compare that
Yeah.
to Half Girlfriend, which, I mean,
Hmm.
is
And I
something.
mean, and see, the greatest like adaptation that I can think of that has always worked in India,
Hmm.
and in so many versions, is always the Ramayana and the Mahabharata.
Yeah.
If you see how I mean, those old books have been kind
Yeah.
of reinterpreted in so many ways,
Mm-hmm.
and yet there's only one version which still is the best version, which was made 30, 40 years ago.
Hmm.
And all the versions that came afterwards, kind of haven't been as successful. So the craft
Devdas
of
is
the
the other one,
makers,
right?
Devdas also, yeah. So there are a lot of
Hmm.
these examples that where so it's really see the film, no, it's I think the adaptation is largely a function of the film team that comes on board.
Hmm.
You can give them
Right.
an amazing book and they can screw it up.
I think that happens much more than the opposite, though. That's what
Yeah,
at least is
exactly.
what blame. Is there a particular thing where you thought that the book itself is whatever, but, like, I mean, you don't need to name the book, but, like, the adaptation uh was like, I mean, I guess Three Idiots, it can be one. Uh
Hmm.
but uh but I'm trying
Like
to
this
think.
show that we are doing with an OTT right now, which we're
Hmm.
planning to produce this year,
Yeah.
is an adaptation of a self-published Hindi novel on Kindle.
Okay.
The author is unknown. There's no publisher. It's only a
Okay.
Kindle book,
Interesting.
and it was a great premise.
Hmm.
And through the process of like adaptation, we've changed a lot of things,
Hmm.
but the essence, remains the same.
Yeah. 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 I mean, a lot of times I feel people try and circumvent that. I was also thinking of Great Gatsby, which is
Hmm.
famously not known to be famously known to be unadaptable, basically, and how, they try and use, almost distinguish it to fit into a modern context much more, like
Yeah.
Baz Luhrmann ka version tha. If I don't know if you've seen it, but
In
I
the
feel.
West now, we've got much better books for
Hmm.
to adapt
Hmm.
because there were much more richer history of authors writing their literary material,
Yeah.
and the extent and the width and the breadth of the publishing industry is much more
Yeah.
richer. and greater.
Have you
In
thought of,
India,
but have you thought of Western literature or Western or other literatures also that you always think can be very interestingly molded into the Indian context? I'm thinking of Shakespeare, of course, and
Shakespeare is
Vishal
always used. I mean,
Bhardwaj has done
has
with
made a
it.
career out of it,
Yeah, basically.
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
but I think that we try and do, but now it's become more and more difficult because of streaming.
Hmm,
All kinds of stories and Western like adaptations are
hmm.
like available to the same Indian audiences.
Got it. Yeah.
So, and like, I mean, if you also look at how many, like in India, there are a lot of like remakes now happening. So not only foreign books, but also foreign
Yes.
shows are being remade
Foreign
here.
films, basically. I mean,
Yeah,
abhi to Bollywood is basically the South industry. They are basically remaking everything,
yeah.
right? Like,
Though I'm not a fan of remakes, so we
yeah,
don't
yes,
really,
I'm
I'm not interested in any
similar.
of those.
Yeah, generally
But
pretty.
yeah, these are all ways to produce things faster and get the writing
Yeah, of
process.
course. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Of course, you have a blueprint, right, already, and then you have to sort of
exactly.
work through it rather than actually
Yeah.
construct it from
So
zero.
I find it actually, so for me, if you give me a blueprint, it's very boring as a producer, as a
Okay,
creator. I'm like,
okay.
"Arey, it's like anybody can do
Hmm.
it.
Hmm.
And if anybody can do it, then why should I do it?
Yeah.
So I
I
don't
mean, it's
find it
good.
challenging and
We
exciting.
need more of that. I feel than right now. I suppose the mentality is very much to
Yeah.
the
So I think we'll
opposite.
always have a mix. There'll always be people who do things for money, and the others
Hmm.
will do it for
The love
creative
of the
satisfaction.
craft. Yeah.
Yes. So each to his own. It's like a buffet, right?
Yeah.
There is every dish on the table on a
Yeah.
streaming platform.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's the streaming conundrum though. Like, it's you can democratize the whole thing, but then you
Yeah.
also have the disciple, Chaitanya Tamhan is the disciple, and along with Shehzada.
Student of the year.
I like Student of the, we are Karan
Part two
Johar fans
also.
here. Part two I haven't seen.
Part two also.
Karan Johar only the
I
Karan
was talking
Johar
about
version.
part two. I like part two.
I like Karan Johar too. So no, but I think that's what was more of the question, I guess, with streaming is always to do with if you're placing two very different types of things. And I guess one of the concerns as sort of cinema quote unquote purists is that art house cinema almost gets buried again on streaming sometimes.
But you have movie, no? Go to movie and watch it. Or whatever
Yeah, how
cinema
many
platform.
movie films have you watched? I want to know that.
I try and watch one in 2-3 months if it's highly recommended.
Which is the one which you watched recently?
Last I watched this film, I can't remember, but was highly spoken about. Very slow film about this daughter and father who go on this trip. Can't remember the name. I can't generally remember names, but I
The
saw it 2 months
father
ago.
or what? No, no, not the
This
father.
she
I-
goes on this trip with her father,
Okay.
daughter. It's a very, very popular. Everybody in Bombay was talking about it. So I
Is
thought I
this,
must watch it.
what language is this?
Was it in Spanish? I
Spanish.
think it's
Interesting. Okay.
I
I think I'm clueless about this, which is surprising considering I'm not the movie audience, but I am kind of it. So,
will.
no, but is there anything good that you liked that was
I'll tell you what
on
I
movie?
like
Yeah,
on movie that I keep watching again and again.
yeah.
Uh, Shatranj Ke Khiladi.
The Satyajit Ray.
Watched,
Yes,
yes,
yeah,
I watched it
yeah.
a few times.
Hmm.
Then recently, sometime back, they got
Ray, actually,
uh,
that reminds me, Ray adapted a lot of, and a lot of his work is adapted still.
hmm, In
I
the
mean,
Mood for
there
Love.
was
I
that.
watched a few times.
Okay, so
We,
that's very art house, I feel.
it's one of my favorite films because of music. I
Okay,
love
yes,
that.
yeah,
I
yeah.
just absolutely love that film.
I'm with you.
And and then I watched this film also, Gammak Ghar by Achal Mishra.
Achal Mishra, which I am not a
Yeah,
fan of,
and
weirdly enough.
yeah, I
So,
mean, I just watch it for the photography and the mood,
yeah, yeah,
and to see Bihar in a certain way.
yeah.
And his most recent film also came on movie, and I watched that
Dhui,
also.
right? The short film, Dhui, I
Right.
think it's called. Yes, yes, yes.
Tween,
Dhuin, yes, 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 yes.
Tween,
Okay, so you
Tween.
are not
Once in a while.
that.
So people say, hey, this
Okay,
is good, or then I'll go and watch. I mean, these films I can watch anytime.
okay, okay. Watch Decision to Leave, please. It's amazing.
Decision to
You
Leave.
will love
Okay,
it. It's like
uh,
someone said it's like murder. Uh,
Oh, अच्छा.
as in like
Hmm.
Mahesh Bhatt's murder, but like, but like directed on some other level, sort of. But it's really,
Okay.
really good. It's fun. It's not slow art house bori,
Just message
whatever.
me the name later. I'll
I
forget.
will, I will, I will. But no, I think that's going to be, I guess, our running thing because I am the art house guy, and I guess
Yeah.
you are not.
So
But
if people really like recommend something, then I'll try and watch it. Like eventually. I
got it.
don't watch much stuff anyway in general.
Yeah, yeah. And I think it's
Uh,
also more you shifting towards you are much more of a series person, right? Or more
that,
of
but more than
yeah.
more so, yeah. I mean, I enjoy series more personally
Hmm.
because I find I like the depth of the worlds and the characters that we can go through in a
I
series.
guess Succession has
More
been
number of
is
hours.
being watched by you currently.
I'm just waiting for a few more episodes to come, but I've heard that it's episode 3 is quite
I
a
know.
cracker.
You know
So
the
don't talk
worst.
about it.
The
So I
worst
will
thing is that I typed Succession on Google by mistake,
what
and the
it
first headline
shit.
spoiled it. So I was like, okay,
So
this will turn.
I've been avoiding everything, and
Okay, got it.
I remember the film. I saw this film called After Sun.
Oh, that's not
It's an English film.
Spanish. That's
Yeah,
yeah,
it's not
yeah,
Spanish. It's English,
yeah,
English.
yeah,
British film,
yeah, yeah.
British film.
Oh, it was making that much buzz in Bombay also. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm
So I
not the
had
biggest
to.
fan of it, to be very honest.
Yes.
So I'm guessing
So
you
I
are
found
not
it a bit more
also.
cammy. It was
Okay.
interesting.
Did you
Not like I
sleep
can go and watch it.
while
I
watching
can't
it?
watch it again. It was too slow for me. I
Yeah.
kept checking my messages in between. And I was like, why am I doing this? But it's good. I like to watch something different.
No, no,
Because anyway,
it
I
makes
don't watch
sense.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you want to say about just generally state of industry? Are you or like just how much you're looking forward to actually House of Talkies making a lot of other projects, right? I think you had gone about
So I think in
you.
general, I think this is a great decade for
Hmm.
India
Hmm.
because of such a vast population that we have that's untapped.
Yeah.
With all the streaming companies looking at India as a big emerging market,
Yeah.
because most of the American platforms are not they can't access China. So
Hmm.
India is this large population where they
Yeah.
have a future, which means a lot of resources are coming here. Our economy is doing well, we are strong. So I
Yeah.
think for Indian creators, for people like me, and all the younger people like you who are kind of, getting into this industry
Hmm.
directly or indirectly,
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of growth possible. A lot of things that were not possible in the last 20,
Yeah.
30
Yeah. 100%.
are going to happen now. So I'm most excited about, what's happening here. Also,
Mm.
I'm most excited about working with younger people who've been to film school, who watch international content, look at
I'll
art
give you
house.
recommendations. Don't worry.
Yeah. So, I mean, just to tell you,
Yeah.
my whole writing team, the ages of my writing team are between 20 and 27.
Wow.
We
Yeah.
work with only new writers, younger
Mm.
writers,
Yeah.
people who've been to film school or are journalists or have some sort of
Yeah,
experience
that's
and passion.
interesting. No, I think it's a good deviation from what has already been said and done and
Yeah. So this
replicated.
generation that's coming in, this will change
Yeah, yeah, I'm
the
sure.
landscape slowly and gradually.
As much
So this
as
is,
as much
yeah.
as they are allowed to change under censorship, I would
See,
assume.
nobody's allowed. No, but see, censorship is not a problem actually. I
Mm.
feel censorship becomes an issue. Like, for example, in India,
Mm.
we've always had a censor certificate for films,
Yeah.
right? So we are used to
Yeah,
being
yeah,
conscious about what to say and how to say. And I think in India, if you have freedom of speech, you also have freedom to get offended,
yeah. I mean, very
right?
easily offended, I would say. I think,
Yeah.
yeah.
So my thing is, it's okay. It's a very small thing in the
Mm.
larger scheme of things,
Mhm. No, that
and
makes sense.
and
I
we
mean,
can
even when
do.
Trial by Fire released, I remember there was the whole. I mean, the people who were accused had put some case in.
Yeah,
Right? And I was like, this is of course
yeah.
going to
They tried to stop
happen.
the release, and we went to court,
Yeah,
and we won the case.
yeah,
So this
yeah,
all happens. I think it's part and parcel of. But I'm
yeah.
saying the joy of creating
Mm.
is amazing when the audience is ready and
Yeah.
there are resources, and this is
No,
that
I
decade.
agree. It's good.
So
I mean, this
despite all these other
sounds.
things,
Yeah, it sounds very promising, which I'm not used to hearing from. I think our podcast is very like despondent about everything Bollywood. So maybe
no,
we
no.
are.
I think this is
Yeah,
the best ever historically time
yeah.
that our country has seen.
Yeah. I mean, that's encouraging, and I can
I want to
only
encourage
hope that.
younger people to take on.
No, no, I would,
So,
it would
yeah.
be encouraging only, to be honest, to have, I mean, Bollywood's been going through a very rough patch, I feel, recently. So maybe it's more to do with just streaming and it
See,
adjusting,
Bollywood is
this
going through a rough.
adjustment
So I'll tell you
period.
what. I'll tell you
Yeah,
people who are going through a rough patch are the old school,
yeah,
uh, the the old domains of power. They are facing a rough patch. Not the and a power shift is happening.
yeah.
Power is shifting from the old guard to the new entrants.
हाँ वो I think
And
वो थोड़ा उसमें you it's a rocky period which will eventually smoothen out, I
but it's
feel
a
like,
rocky period for them
for
who
them, yes.
made the best of everything.
So
I
you're
don't think it's
going
a rocky period.
to be seeing Tu Kisi Ka Bhai, or so, what's the title? I forgot.
I've not seen a Salman Khan film since I don't even know when.
Okay.
Maybe like a decade or
Pathan you
so.
saw? Or no?
No, I haven't. I hardly watch films.
No, I know. I was just asking. I watched no Pathan. That's why I was asking.
How is it?
Not good.
Yeah, I mean the
I
the
didn't like
trailer.
it, and I'm a Shah Rukh Khan fan. So I mean,
Yeah, but the good thing I think about Indian films, they make honest trailers. The
they
trailer
don't
you can
false.
see.
They don't trick you into thinking it's good.
Now it's very difficult to trick the audience. So they're
Yeah,
making what it is. So I'm
yeah.
like, okay, great. So you can
As
pick
a,
and
you
choose.
at least know that we can, yeah, exactly. At least they're not
Yeah.
selling you something that then you'll not actually get. Got it.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Plus, because like people around me watch so much of content all the time,
They
I
tell
try
you.
and watch less. I'm like, I'm
Okay.
good.
That makes
Because
sense.
you get very influenced subconsciously.
You do.
Yeah.
100%. I mean, yeah. I mean, that's the whole thing. I think people try and watch everything as soon as it releases so that they don't get influenced or they don't watch it at all, which both make sense, I feel. But
Yeah.
yes, no, thank you. Thank you so much for telling us a lot about Story Inc., about House of Talkies, and Binjistan, which apparently is not coming back soon. But but no, those two I'm very excited to see actually more and more stuff from House of Talkies, especially after Trial by Fire, which I think is one of the best Indian TV shows. And that's not only because you're here. We have an episode in which we champion it basically for a while. So I hope you guys, whoever hasn't watched it, please do go watch it. It's a very, very great show. And I think whatever you had said about, the differences in adaptation from the novel to the show itself. I mean, whoever has read the novel, it will be interesting to see if they have anything to tell us how they felt about it. Then, of course, the other projects I'm sure we're going to see soon
No soon
on
about.
whatever
Yeah.
on Netflix, Amazon, whatever other production, sorry, whatever streaming companies are available. But yes, thank you so much for listening. You can follow Sid on Twitter, I was saying Instagram at _ Sidharth _Jain _ and the other, that's correct, right? I hope I dropped. And
It's okay.
Siddharth is,
They'll find me.
हाँ, I mean, वो description में we will add. It's not like you need people to find you is less. We need people to find us via you, I think. But story link, again, everything will be in the description, so I'll make sure to put that.
Cool.
And you can follow me if you want on Terminal Cinema if you want, I guess, more about art house cinema. That's if that's what I've become now. Occasionally, you will get one or two
No, but
posts
you do
about.
commercial also. So it's fine.
I was about to say occasionally you will
It's
get
fine.
one or two Bollywood films like uske bare mein I'll 100% put. But anyways, yes, you can do that. And Queen is Dead's handle is dead, sort of on Instagram. So I think not publicizing it anymore. Anyways, thank you so much for listening and khatam.